Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everybody. All right, in the absence of Mr. Bishop, we will go down the list. We do not have any minutes to approve. We'll skip that. Yes, new business, please. Others are going to be afterwards, so we'll jump right into new business.
Sure. It's kind of all rolled into one anyway.
Yeah.
Water service line inventory. We talked about that at a previous meeting, or maybe two previous meetings ago. That John and a few others are working to populate the portion of what we have in-house. That was months on end.
Mm-hmm.
Any locations that we didn't have anything to identify the customer's portion of the water service, we're going to get those notices that everybody got. Because unfortunately, the majority of the town, we don't have information on the privately owned sections.
I didn't like the way it read. It basically tells you that you have a lead service.
Horrible written. Well, so kind of weird that I believe nobody at Redville Village got a letter except for one person.
No one should have gotten one at all.
Because everybody except for one person, the chairman of the trustees got it.
Interesting.
So I had told, we had a trustees meeting a week before that, and somebody questioned some horrible things about the water. I got up and I said, although this is not a Red Mill Village thing, I gave an explanation about the current state of more or less what I wrote in my paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then to that fashion. And I told everybody, you're about to get I said that everybody in the nation's about to get a letter and let it go off, but we're not going to get one in a Red Mill Village.
Yeah, there was a couple of addresses that seemed to have slipped through that were built after the lead ban, but those are the easy ones to deal with because you know right away that it's just a. So.
What's interesting was my relatives got that letter and not one person called me. I was just surprised that nobody might know. Did anybody call you and your family in Massachusetts about that letter?
They don't have to send it.
But they got the letter.
Yeah.
Not.
So you don't no notification needed if you're not on the unknown or, but I've educated my family.
Well,
That's a call.
I thought
Department.
my family would have called me to ask me about it.
Yeah. I did a coworkers that came over that got in water.
We've had surprising response to the letter. All of it has actually been very good. We've had a lot of conversations with residents explained, and better communicated the information that EPA was trying to put out.
Well, there was a notice from EPA that put out in the general news. I heard a number of times about it.
Yeah, so we had actually planned to actually put a cover letter with that to simplify in our terms what we're looking for. And we later found out before distribution that it could take up to 3 weeks to get the approval to have anything accompany that pre-printed letter. So that was off the table, wasn't an option for us.
Is that approval for it to accompany it in the same mailing or to send it out at all?
In general.
So even if we mailed out the notice and then in a completely separate mailing, mailed it out, that still wouldn't be.
You don't have the authority to downplay any of the languages that they use, similar to what we don't have the options for changing in certain things on any other form that we use.
Right. It's hard, dealing with on Facebook or on email, like Frank said, you don't want to downplay what the notice says. You try to give the people as much true information, less alarmingly than the letter does, but it's difficult. So
and then we were informed that the QR code was not working in the beginning. Some people had tried that and it wasn't working. There was some type of login error that was fixed shortly thereafter. The difference between that, if you go in through the QR code, they ask for your address, they ask for the material type, they want a picture uploaded to verify exactly what it is. So not as easy as calling us or having us go out. You know, we can do the same. We can enter it in manually into the database, but anybody that's looking to do it on their own is going to need picture evidence to be uploaded. So just an extra step, and unfortunately, it's going to be the first step of many in the investigation process. You know,
So
so
we sent the letter out, you must have got several calls, and we sent technicians out to take a look at things, and we haven't done that yet.
we've gotten millions of phone calls. We've sent out hundreds of technicians. We've been slammed nonstop. The phone has had a delay of 20 voicemails.
There's no way of knowing for sure, or digging though, right?
That's one of the future steps. So this is to confidently estimate what's could be coming from the residence meter out to the shut off in the street. And if it comes up as an iron pipe service, there's a higher probability that it could have a lead gooseneck, unless we have records to show that the town portion has been replaced, which would eliminate that. So it's a multi-step process, and you know, this is probably the largest inventory gathering that's ever been done for any type of system that we don't own. So this is a homeowner portion. You know, we don't have records of it unless it's fairly new. You know, as for instance, Red Mill and some of the other places in town. And being that it's on the homeowner side, there could be multiple different types of material used over the years if repairs have been made. So, you know,
I
that
talked about it before, it'd be patchwork.
Yeah.
But, you know,
we've seen it. We've run into it quite a bit, unfortunately. And some of the people that we've actually spoken to have commented, say, I know I have copper coming in, but I have plastic out in my yard because I had a leak before. You know, what do I put down? Well, you're going to put copper because that's what's there. You know, or what do you have the majority of? If you think you have more plastic than copper, we can put that. But, you know, that's where it gets a little tricky if you're uploading a picture. If you're saying I have the majority of what my service is plastic, but you upload a picture of copper, you know, if it gets reviewed, it'll be flagged. So this is the first step. As you mentioned, there could be excavation involved later on to determine, especially if upgrades haven't been done on the town portion, or if there is any concern with an unknown, you know, as far as what's coming in the house may be different from what we show is connected to. So it's to be determined later on, unfortunately. But one thing people seem to be taken back was that this is a federal government requirement. We've had a few people flat out refuse to tell us what's there because they don't think the government should be involved. So don't know how that's going to play out in the future if we don't have information to put in there, if it's going to impact us or impact that actual address that we can't gather the information from. So,
well, we can only do so much.
you know, 100%, right? Yeah. So,
Maybe the National Guard will be going
Nothing would surprise me.
So Brooke, Janice, and John have been very efficient with actually talking many of the residents through how to identify it themselves, where the meter is located, and going through the process. But it's a timely phone call, so that's why there's such a backlog of calls, and we will get to people as we have time. There's other stuff that still has to take place here in the office as well.
I also try to get them to email, if they don't know, to email me a picture of their service, and we can usually help identify it that way.
Is there a deadline they're imposing on us to have it?
Well, as far as getting the all lead service line and goosenecks, I believe, connects us 10 years, I believe.
Yeah, there's a certain period of time, but the notifications start now and then.
Right.
Take all attempts on your end that you can do, and then document how many times you've notified and attempted.
Yeah, it's a continuous.
By the time the 10 years is up, they'll have discovered that copper's no good.
Yeah.
Oh, plastic too.
Right.
We won't go there, engineer.
Right. Well, you know, when lead was invented, they thought it was a wonderful invention for the lead service.
Oh, we've had to explain that as if these were all approved materials.
Well, not just that, but you also, if the water quality is decent, you don't have, your lead can,
There's no leaching.
yeah, it's not, doesn't leach into your water anyway, so.
But yeah, that's why corrosion control was put in place. You could have
Good.
any type of material and it was perfectly fine, but that brings you down a whole nother level of explanation that most people just don't understand.
Most people.
Most, yeah, exactly most. There are a few. Let's see, what else we're gonna jump to here. So, capital budget items. I apologize if that email didn't get to you guys. We will send it. Okay. When did it go out?
Possible I got it, man.
Late this afternoon.
It was there. Okay, all right, yeah, I know. We've gotten sidetracked over quite a few things. So one of the requests is common is going to be a vehicle replacement quote. We were told, I'll say we've been told, we were told that the cost for these prices, on the trucks were gonna be going down. Doesn't appear that the base price has dropped at all. And unfortunately, some of the additional parts, as if we would put a utility body or a plow on, have continued to rise. So to get slightly creative and still be able to replace a vehicle in the fleet, we have requests out to get a price on a small SUV or a smaller style truck. And that could replace, either my truck or John's truck and put that into the fleet. Eliminate one of the high mileage vehicles that we have that's, having some structural issues, rust, rot, stuff like that. So, definitely not the path that we had planned to go, but spending $100,000 on a pickup truck doesn't seem to be something that we should do if we don't have to. So, getting something newer in the fleet, removing, some of the older ones, knock on wood, all but one passed inspection this last round. And we're working to get that one repaired, but,
How many total trucks do we have?
this guy with the hard questions, yeah, I believe we're at 10. Some of which are pushing 180,000 miles. We do all the maintenance in-house ourselves, we keep up on them, we've been very lucky with it, but, structurally, as a New England truck that is out plowing, on dirt roads in the wells, yeah, they get worked, so, they've definitely given us their life and then some, so we're trying to, be proactive and avoid any costly repairs or have it be so far out of, anybody's ability to use it when we sell it, that we still get something for it. Because all these trucks will be auctioned off and that small amount that we get for them goes back into the retaining earnings budget. So, those prices are yet to be determined. We have until the 19th to get our capital budget in, and if we're lucky, we'll come down to the wire with an actual quote. More importantly, we will be putting the request out to the Capitol and to the FinCom to ask for additional funding for the Cottage Street aerator tank improvement, aerator and mixer. Sorry, forgot about that. The original estimates that we had in place actually came back low. There was only one bidder that submitted to install that into the tank because it's a tank that was designed by a certain company. Others, competitors just really aren't interested in working on other people's tanks. So that definitely could have played into the cost difference from what we had estimated. So we would be putting the number. We'll be asking for an additional $250,000. That holds a large contingency in there, just because we'll be having people enter the tank, and we haven't been inside that tank physically and done any type of inspections in many, many years. We have divers go in, they check the integrity of it, but we're talking about going in, pressure washing the walls. If there's any micro cracks, right, with no water in it, drain it completely out. We couldn't do a more thorough inspection than we would at this point in time. So if there's any deficiencies found, we'd want to make sure that we can take care of them and address it, at that time. So.
Are we gonna fix the top of the tank top? The exterior? You told me the exterior has some,
The exterior is unsightly to look at, but it is not deteriorating. So it's basically an aesthetics. We will address that by, I don't know if it'll be part of this, but we are looking to do some improvements on that.
Jim and I would love one of these days to have a visit all the stuff.
I'm sure we can make that happen.
You mentioned that,
I think you said that a few times, and we have failed to.
Jim might have
Come
a
on.
chance to get laid off. So.
And he's got that special truck that he can drive in the off-road, so not sure that EV will be so happy with the woods.
You haven't been in the treatment plant, have you?
I have not.
Yeah.
So I see very little of the infrastructure.
You know?
So we can get you in some masks and gowns and take you there. So, talk quickly about, the water meters and the abnormal amount of unreads that we came up with in this last, reading sequence. So, typically, we usually have 30 or more unreads come up each time we go out and read, each quarter. So we budget for, 150 to 170 meter replacements each year based on the previous followings of 30 to 40, per quarter. This time, and I think Brooke can correct me if I'm wrong, we had well over 300 unreads. Oh, wow. You know, just like a flip of the switch. You know, the last quarter, we had all these readings were coming in, and then all of a sudden, you know, we've so much so that we actually called in, the representative from Thai Sales who supplies us with our reading software. Had him come by, go around with our techs and show exactly what was going on. There are some issues with age to our reading system, which I think we talked about before. Unfortunately, we're stuck still because the town, has not made a final decision on who their operating system is going to be. So the company that we have now works with the system that we still use, isn't greatly compatible with the company that the town has switched to. So although it could be done, there's extra work involved to have the two be compatible. And our concern was that if the town wasn't going to be happy with who they just recently switched to, we were going to be paying 2 or 3 times, switch the same information around. So that will still happen at some point in the future. Once the town has settled on somebody, we will eventually need to, move our software over so that everything's compatible. And then whatever the cost is to have everything meshed together. With the drive-by system, we will obviously work on that, but this is a whole separate issue that's come up. So the tech that came out, Pete, he went through, we looked at a few things. Brooke has pulled up a huge report, and it was actually back in the early 2000s that we did a blitz on the town, and we got everybody on radios within, I think it was a year or a year and a half. So that was right around the time we switched from reading twice a year to quarterly. And the push was on to get as many radios in to avoid having to walk around or having to do estimated reads. Well, not only are those meters very old, because most of the meters that had the radios added to still work. They could be from the 90s, the 2000s, the 80s. But what's happening now is the batteries in the radio boxes that were installed are expiring. So we have to come up with the simple solution to cut down on the unreads, to avoid the extra work that Brooke has to do with estimating the readings, and to accurately calculate the water usage in town for DEP. So we were supposed to meet today with our representative from Thai Sales. Unfortunately, he took ill, so we may not see him this week. After speaking to him today, he actually didn't sound too good. So we wanted to look at a few options. First would be getting basically a price from them for just the new batteries for each of the radio boxes, and then we would all go out and blitz and replace the batteries. Using the existing meters, the existing wire, and the existing radio box, that would buy us some time. The other option would be to replace the radio itself, which is all externally on the older style. It's a gray box wired on the outside of the house. And then the most costly, but possibly the most effective, would be to purchase meters with the radios on it, like the ones that we install now. But that requires getting in, setting up appointments with each one of these addresses that has failed, and physically getting in and replacing it. So that would be the longest duration of time that we could see these accounts remain as unread and have to be estimated. So we're going to get multiple estimates on what we can and can't do. All of this, unfortunately, is going to exceed our annual budget for meter replacements. So it would have to be a capital request, go before the finance committee, the capital board, and town meeting. If we were looking to, more than likely, I think we come up with a ballpark of maybe 100,000 to 150,000 per year from retained earnings to go just dedicated to meter and radio box replacement upgrades. Doing what I think is best as far as replacing the aged meters and the radios, like I said, is gonna take the longest amount of time to get done. It's gonna be the most costly. So the other option would be to look into getting an estimate for actually having it done by a professional firm that can come in with a group of people and do a blitz on the town. So
outsourcing it rather than having our department do it.
So originally, and Tara might remember when this took place, we had mass meter installation come in when the town didn't actually have water meters. Everybody was on a flat rate. This company came in, went through the entire town, cut in meters if they didn't have any valving or anything, installed the meters and went on. They handled all the appointments, they handled everything. If there was an issue with a shutoff or needing to have a shutoff added, then the water department personnel would go out and shut it off at the street.
Right.
So as 5 of these different options, obviously they all come at significant cost. So
That would certainly be the quickest, right?
it would be, providing that, they have companies that are readily available to throw staff, at the project. And I don't know, I couldn't even fathom what that cost would be.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's labor, you have the goods and services purchased, but then you also have the labor involved. So if you're gonna have them done at the same time, you would usually just have the contractor purchase. Or do a separate bid where you procure them
And supply.
and then have it installed. But it's usually put together in the bid.
So it's
I
definitely,
would think from their perspective, they would want to supply everything for themselves, right?
There's pros and cons to it.
Yeah.
You can, if you go out for procurement of what you want, there's pros and cons. So having them be fully responsible for purchasing, installing and warranty.
definitely stuff we'll be talking about in a short period of
How
time.
many services do we have?
Yeah, like 57 and change, 5763 or something. So
So these 300 that don't work with the initial, what do you do now for those 300 are currently, are all estimated bill?
they will more than likely all be estimated bills based on the previous 4 years at the same quarter. So technically, that would actually probably be, the bill would be less than the actual read. That's just the way the estimate works. Should this carry on to be a longer issue, that's when you start seeing possible, areas where they may have used more one summer and they're not using it this much. So, we definitely want to keep the estimated time frame to a minimum. We have run into this before in the past, not so much with meter failures, but being unable to obtain readings back when we actually used to have winters. And we couldn't physically get to all of the addresses within the time frame allowed before bills had to go out. So it's not uncommon for this to happen, but it's not.
Does it ever happen that you go out and get it unread, and then the next quarter you go out and now it's reading again without having done anything?
It has.
Yeah.
It has. That's usually indicating that there's a weak battery, and possibly while you were reading, it was either very hot or very cold, and it just wasn't, the radio and the meter just weren't talking. So what we do before we hand cards out, I'm sure you've seen the red cards that leave on the door, we actually send an operator back out with what we call a handheld computer, and they will actually physically push in the 10-digit number and try and get that reading before leaving the card. Because there are certain instances when you pull up in front of a house and it just doesn't read. For whatever it is, there's some type of interference or something. So out of the 200 or 300 that we had, we may have gotten 20.
So
It's,
we're not talking about double A batteries here, right?
no, unfortunately. No, these are sealed batteries that are hardwired in. So the amount of time it would take to replace a battery, is minimal. It's just involved. So until we speak with Joe about, what he feels is the best option, we have radio boxes that, are still working from the 2000s, and, obviously those could fail at any time. And, we could be right back in the same boat. So looking at, doing this, we would target definitely the oldest radio boxes first. We know where those are located based on the computer system that we have, and go from there. So there's probably close to half the town that has some aging boxes out there. But it's just the nature of doing business. You're going to be on a cycle of redoing these every 10 or 15 years. Do you plan plan for it and be proactive and take boxes off and meters out that are actively working? Or do you, wait until you actually come up with a failure?
I think the answer is yes.
Twice. Do it twice. So, some logistics to be worked out.
You asked two questions, but I'm
Mhm.
sarcastic. I think it should be proactive, but it's easy for me to say.
Mhm. Again, it's all about the amount of staff we have available to do the work and the time it takes. That's the huge variable, which is the reason why we had mass installation do the work.
I like the idea
Original.
about hiring a company to do it. I know it'd be more expensive.
I do
but
too. I'm sure
The beauty about that is your staff can continue doing what they're doing.
You're spending the money one way or the other, you're either paying your staff to
That's
do
right,
it,
you take
and
the
they're not
staff and
doing.
put them over here, know what's happening with everything else.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's
I agree.
that's exactly what we're up against is the balance
What's
of
your
what
experience?
we can do.
So some communities attempt to do 10% of their meter replacements every year. Just keep that on a rolling basis, but they have dedicated staff to meter. They have a assigned position for that. It can be, if you've got 5,800, I mean, you're talking about almost 600 meters a year. So you can try to schedule as many as you can, but, a meter installer has they target it, they blanket it, they get as many as they can, they set up appointments, they're out full-time for the first several months, doing as many appointments a week as they can, and
It's not
it
just,
starts to peter out. You get to that 85-90% period of time, and you get most of them, and then it kind of takes about 6 months to get the rest.
and it's not just the replacing of the meter, it's the cost of meters too.
Yeah.
Which is substantial now.
I will say that we've had a couple replaced in our building in the last year or so. Each time you guys have come out, it's been extremely efficient, been pretty quick, they've done a great job.
99% of the time, you can in and out of there.
Yeah, the hardest part about one of ours was finding the meter. We had
Yes.
where it was.
Yeah.
Once we found it, it was like, oh, no brainer.
Yeah, that's the other limitations that you have is that, these meters and these radio boxes last so long that, the average person that was here probably isn't the same person that's going back to install it. So when the homeowner asks you, well, where is it located? You really don't have much of a clue, as they don't. You're doing, more time looking for it and finding it in the basement or in the crawl or under the stairs, than the average appointment. So there's a few things that lead up to the determination of what we should do. But I know I wanted to talk to Steve about it tonight. I wasn't sure if he was going to make it, but I know Mansfield just went through a meter replacement. I don't know if they did that in-house or if they'd sent that out or not.
I know we did an analysis of converting from drive-by to AMI, and different options on how to install to it, and I wasn't involved really in that project.
Okay.
I believe they moved forward with at least the next step.
I mean, there's the option that you could always go do a radio box replacement project, purchase so many of those, go out, do a blitz with what the employees that we have now to target the unreads that we have. I'm sure some of those are going to come up and say that it's not just the box that's bad, that it's also the meter. That number would probably be minimal, and we could, obviously make an appointment and go back for that, and then work towards a bigger meter upgrade in the future. So, like I said, we were hoping to have that conversation today with Joe, but unfortunately.
And
that's delayed.
we also talked about one pro of having it done by our own technicians is identifying lead services in homes.
Yeah.
Not lead services, but service line materials,
So we would highly recommend that you require that.
Yes,
So-
yes.
As part of,
I was gonna say, we can ask the installer to add that to their.
Yeah, we've got a whole checklist of what an installer is supposed to take photos of and document, and they go in there.
so having photos of everything would also be the added benefit. We'd see that it's sealed when the technician, whoever it is, leaves. So we'd have that on record as well, starting points of readings, old meter readings. So it'd definitely be a lot of information to have on file, but okay, we'll work towards that as we progress. I believe the articles are due by the 19th, but I don't know if a dollar amount is due on there, so we may look at putting the language together.
The articles for the special town meeting that we don't know when's gonna happen again?
No,
The capital.
articles.
Oh, okay.
The way that special meeting plays out might actually work in our benefit if we actually do have one for the aerator project. So right now, for the additional funds that we're gonna ask for to be added to the previous amount for the aerator. If it goes to regular town meeting, won't be available till July 1. If we have a special and we have that article on the special and it's approved, funds are available at that time. So that would allow us to step up.
So if we're having a special town meeting for one thing, it's a town meeting, we can add whatever we want, what other articles that don't have anything to do with why we're having a special town meeting in the first place.
Yes, so we would, if we had that, we definitely use it to our benefit.
Yeah,
And other departments can add to
Yeah,
that too,
right.
so yeah.
So jumping from that to Elm Street, we still do not have an update on the project. There was some last minute news that came down. I know Steve Peterson had seen something. I know you had mentioned that you saw an email from Paul DiGiuseppe. It sounds like conversations are still taking place to discuss a possible TIF agreement between the purchaser and the town. Until we know more, that's going to trigger or not trigger a special town meeting, which is the next thing on there.
So you haven't been involved with these discussions?
A handful, but nowhere near as many as Paul and Mike have. We've explained to
Those
them.
really have nothing to do with that. I
Mhm.
mean, it's a talent, it's a, what's the selectmen
Yep.
playing on.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's been taken out of our hands, and it's definitely in different hands now to determine what the next steps are. There are concerns that if it leads into the meeting in May, that the window for construction might be too small. I know Steve and I had gone back and forth about this and possibly looking to, you could move the grant funded portion to the front, but there's also issues with the completion time and stuff, so a lot hinges on this agreement with the town making the TIF work or not.
Yeah.
So we know if we're just gonna, walk away, or if we're gonna move forward, so.
What effect does the TIF have on the $3.5 million grant? Like if they end up paying for the whole rest of it, do we still get that money to go towards it, or is it because they're funding it privately? Does that affect that?
There's been discussions about how much can be funded and how much the town is on the hook for to show that it has some skin in the game.
Yeah.
We think we have a pretty good handle on that, but until we actually have something in writing from the potential buyer, we don't want to reach out to the grant professionals to ask those questions till we have everything spelled out. So there's definitely been some discussions about that behind the scenes, and it seems like it'll work out, but
So basically the next step is lock down the TIF and get it done before May. Or whatever the deadline is to keep that
the sooner the better
happening.
for that special town meeting. If I remember correctly, it takes 3 weeks to set up a town meeting.
Because if they wait too long and it gets to be March or April, they're not gonna do a special town meeting. All town meeting's right around the corner, we'll just wait till then, and then by then, it's probably too late.
But we would be advantageous to put this on the special as opposed to the annual.
I believe it would be, yeah.
For the same reason, to start.
Same reason.
Just to get the jump on everything, to get moving as quickly as possible. So,
So what about the planning board article? About rezoning for the MBTA overlay district?
I do
I
not
only
have,
ask you that because it's a moot point about Elm Street if that's not gonna fly.
yes, it is true. I have not heard any more discussions on that.
I haven't
Originally,
seen anything.
There's a deadline, this, like, the end of the month, right, or something?
I've already moved the deadline, but, we're either
I was told that was not gonna be brought up again until spring.
very controversial, it seems to be. Nobody's listening to the planning board at all. They're accusing the planning board about conspiracy, which is all crazy, but it's a conspiracy. Yeah, they're trying to do their job as far as I can tell.
yeah, originally there was discussion that would also be part of the special because it was such an important thing and had such a deadline on it. Now that I believe that deadline has passed, I think, as John said, it would just be kicked to the next meeting unless for some reason we hear
That
it
could
the
be
last
good though.
minute.
If we have a special town meeting first, and that gets kicked to the spring town meeting, then maybe the $3.5 million grant goes through and it doesn't matter what happens there.
Yeah, nobody
Makes
knows.
sense.
I don't think anybody knows the answer to that, really.
Yeah, there's concerns if that MBTA grant, MBTA doesn't go through, that you could suffer issues with grants that aren't used in full.
Not just this grant.
Oh, any,
Right, but would it affect grants that have already been paid out?
I think if this payout started, I think they would complete it. But I think if it hasn't been dug into yet, I think you stand a chance of losing it, is the last that we had heard from conversations with others.
Of course, there's a lawsuit like this.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So unfortunately, as with many things, there's more unknowns than knowns with how that could play out. But, somebody had asked, I don't know if it was, actually, it might even been Steve, the price for a water meter with the radio transmitter that we pay right now is actually $290 a piece. So just for a ballpark idea of what we'd be looking to spend if we're looking to change everything out. There is a possibility that we may get a better price on that if we buy or agree to buy a bulk quantity, or they both have some discount. So, but I can't speak for any of that other than the possibilities there.
The times they are selling more than one type of quantity,
No,
right?
no, they are the distributor for Neptune, for the Northeast. So that is the other issue that has been asked and will need to be confirmed, is if they are sole source, because that changes the process for procurement and bidding when you exceed a certain amount, even if you do sealed bids. So that was something that was also going to be cleared up in today's meeting that was postponed. So we can go from there. If it opens the door for and or equivalence, that's going to lengthen this process drastically. The other thing that's going to be going before capital is additional funding request for phase 3 at Cobb Street, the wastewater pumping station upgrades. Phases 1 and 2 have been completed. They come in at budget or slightly over. I believe we were over by 6,000 based on the change order that we had up at one of them. Because we had asked for the appropriation of funds for phase 3 early on, which is the replacement for the pumps and motors, and we're unable to follow through with that because phases 1 and 2 were delayed significantly. The price and the availability issues have all come back to really stick it to us. So now the original allocation was 500,000, and we're looking to ask for, I believe, an additional 250,000, or right around there. Yeah, I know we're still working on those numbers to bring the total request for phase 3 to 750,000. So the motors that are there are obviously special motors. The VFDs are even more involved because they're in a confined space, environment with potential hazardous atmospheres. We would be adding a VFD unit to pump 3, which is our backup pump. Right now that comes on, of course, with just line power. It's triggered by a float. If 1 and 2 fail, you get a high level, it trips pump 3, which for 30 years hasn't been an issue, but that's pretty aggressive for a pump of that size to really come on that hard, and it's aggressive on the check valves and the plumbing and everything that's involved.
The VFD kind of ramps it up.
Yep, it'll ramp it up slow. It'll keep your continuous run going, based on the draw on the motor. So we've added those everywhere that we possibly can. This station and the sister station, Great Woods, are set up the same way with pump 3 coming on across the line. So definitely, as you know, how costly variable frequency drives are. That has definitely led to the price increase that we're going to see. So those are the 2 major requests that you'll see going through. The aerator is actually going to be a request to be spent out of retained earnings, no borrowing. The upgrade for phase 3 would be, no, I'm backwards. The aerator is going to be capital requests, require borrowing. Phase 3 is going to be retained earnings, not require borrowing. Long week.
But the aerator is gonna require an article, and the other one's just gonna go on the capital plan expense.
And started talking about well 5 before the meeting. The motor has failed in well 5. This is one of the newer wells online since February 2022. We've had our well specialist come out and verify what we verified as far as making the wires to it. Until it's pulled, there's no 100% confirmation on what the actual failure is. The assumption, based on his years of experience and ours, unfortunately, with failures, is that the motor itself has failed, and more than likely the pump is still good. Throw on some rough numbers. The replacement cost for the same motor is $15,000 to $16,000, and we have some availability issue concerns with that. More than likely, we're going to see a comparable pump and motor swapped in for less than that cost to get us back up and running and have some more common parts installed there that if there is a problem, it will have less of a lead time in the future. I was speaking with Tara before the meeting on our way here. We will be speaking with them and with Frank Sullivan, who installed the original motor, to see if there's anything that we can go back on to look at possibly a warranty or something that
So there's nothing to put in temporarily?
for the amount of work that's involved, it's really not a temporary install. What you're going to put in, you're going to want to leave in place. If there's any repairs that can be done to the existing motor and pump that come out, it could possibly be stored and kept for a future date if there was another failure. That's to be determined. Just the amount of work that it takes to have them come out and mobilize, set up the crane, separate it, pull it, get it back online. It's involved to do something.
You can't even like go down in there and inspect it. You gotta yank it out and then look at it.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
just a total different animal from what we've had in the past. We'll jump over to TTHM.
So,
Oh,
well, 5 out, what's that do to us?
That changes. We still meet demand based on the time of year. What it changes is the operational procedures at the water treatment facility, moving us up to 19 to 20 hours of runtime. So it changes the frequency of the backwashes, changes the frequency that the operators come in to take them on and offline. But as far as water quality, water capacity, it really doesn't change. We modify the system to work that way.
So the money to repair this well, is that readily available?
It is readily available if we do not exceed $10,000. If we exceed $10,000, we do an emergency procurement for funds authorized through the town manager. We can then go through, use the company that we want, and then after the fact, we could go out and get 2 separate quotes of comparison work. But it doesn't create a delay in the repair.
So in order to, I'm sure you've thought about all this stuff. Obviously, spring is around the corner. That's when you're going to need demand. Is there enough time to do this, or you don't know yet?
Oh,
You
definitely.
don't know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this will more than likely be replaced within the week.
Okay.
We work extremely well with Frank Sullivan.
Okay.
Being that this
I
is,
wasn't sure of that.
yeah, being that what he's proposing to replace are basically on the shelf common items compared to what's there, that's kind of
That keeps it under the 10,000.
It'll keep it around
So
there. I
you don't
can't
need us
guarantee you.
to approve anything?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
I just want to make sure that everything
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
I don't want any,
There'll be no delays based on the importance of the issue.
Okay.
We have ways to work around that. If it was something that we could plan, then it would have been an article and go through that, but unfortunately emergencies happen and we have special procurement procedures for that. Jump over to TTHM. The last round of TTHM samples actually were all below the MCL. They were taken right after our round of flushing was completed. Unfortunately, as we've explained in the past, that doesn't necessarily keep the long-running annual average below the MCL. So once all the information is gathered and reports are done, based on preliminary reports and numbers that I've thrown in, it appears we're still going to have an exceedance on the LRAA, which is going to trigger a public notice to let residents know that the annual average, or the annual location average, for that one site is still above, even though the quarterly results were where they should be. So,
I can't wait to read the language of that, postcard.
It's not as bad as the lead one, believe it or not. Slightly better.
slightly better,
Slightly
but,
better.
but again, we don't have the option of modifying it.
Well, the comment I get from people who actually commented on it.
What is
they
that?
believe that we get a postcard about something that happened several months ago. Like, why didn't you tell me right away?
There's no possible way to notify right away,
I
but
try
yeah,
to explain it in
Yeah.
English, and trust me, as frustrated as you are, I get the same.
we are there with them.
If it was something that needed to be notified right away.
And that's what I
it would
told
be
people,
notified right away.
but again, they don't, either they don't trust me, believe me, or anything me.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with me, actually.
Yeah.
Yes to all of them, as you say. We'll jump over to East Hodges Street. The contractor did return and completed 95% of the work that they needed to there. They will be returning to, address, some of the trenches and the leftover saw cuts, that are in the road that's supposed to be done prior to getting any bad weather. See if that takes place. They did install a lateral and a hydrant for future expansion down Dean Street on the right-hand side of the road. They were not able to finish the pressure test chlorination and sampling on that leg. So because there's no services off of it, we're leaving it off until they can return in the spring. And the hydrant is bagged out of service. So it's in place, just inactive. So we'll deal with that, when they return. More than likely, I believe it has a black bag on it now, so we may actually have to change that out to something that might be a little bit more visible as we, go into the bad weather.
Is that something the fire department will still use if needed?
No water to it at all. And I think one of my last things is lead and copper sampling. Water sample bottles have been distributed to all addresses that are on the Mass DEP pre-approved sampling list. This is the list that John had worked on a few months back, adding many new homes based on certain criteria to the list, to see if there's any possibility of boosting the response that we're getting from the customers. We're still, I believe, short. Last I had heard from talking with Chris. So knowing that there was no guarantee that adding the additional sites would get us to the quarter, it was the best option that we had available to us at the time. So if we do not gather the approved amount of samples, which is 60 bottles, we will receive an NON, unfortunately for customer participation, because these are samples that are gathered by the homeowner, not by the department. So, although we've improved the odds, we don't have full control over the results. Yeah. So, and then I do have one last minute question that came up. If you want to take this out of order, or if you want to wait till the end, it's up to you.
No, we can take it right now if you want.
We had talked, and they had visited us before. I believe it was discussed back then, and it was going to be 0 South Washington Street. This is a proposed warehouse at the Norton-Taunton line.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It now has an address. It's 299 South Washington Street. The proposed warehouse came before us, had a discussion explaining what was going to be needed there, and this is the area where the desal water line.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if that's the one they wanted to reuse that.
So the board had granted approval for them to upgrade, modify, do whatever's needed to bring that line up to current standards, installing hydrants, valves, pressure test, everything, so that they will have water to their facility. This kind of dropped off for a while. Now it's back, seeming like it's moving forward. The oddity here is that the water department won't sign off on a building permit unless you have a potable water solution, meaning a private well or an active water service, where they're going to be performing an infrastructure improvement to bring water to the site. We plan to work with the building department to see if there's any type of provisional approval that can be given for it. But the holdup is, in the past, the water department commission board hasn't allowed any construction to begin until the infrastructure improvement was in place and up and active full.
but the construction we're talking about is structure approved.
is contingent on the water, so they can't occupy this facility if they don't modify and bring some type of water source to it. So the only person that really stands to lose here is the builder if they stop building this property and they can't complete the water main to the property. So the ask is, would the board be willing to waive the requirement to have the infrastructure improvement installed and fully completed before we allow them to start their build on the building? They're looking to do two projects simultaneously.
Right.
Which obviously we know time is money. I don't personally see a problem with it, but
I say, I don't think I.
historically, we've always required the infrastructure improvement to be
Makes sense.
in place, fully usable before anything else
This is kind of a unique situation.
100%.
So is there fire protection capability over there or not?
When this line is done, there will be.
So while the project's being built, there's no fire protection. So is that a?
That could be a concern. There is a pond adjacent to where they're building this that they could draft from.
Okay, so they put some kind of temporary well or pump from that pond in place that might.
That obviously, I don't think
the
their insurance company might be concerned.
yeah, the bank
Yep.
or a
Right.
bank or something would be concerned about fire protection. I mean, other than water supply.
I mean,
I don't see it as a major.
our active water is not that far away, but it's definitely not within AWWA hydrant spacing. Where we're
You're
probably,
saying the only one that's not signed off as the water is it really also the fire department? I mean, I can't imagine.
so they've approved the plans, but they're going off of plans that show what is gonna be there, not what's there right now. So they understand the limitations to where they have to start and where they have to finish. But we're kind of the last holdup before we sign off on the building permit, which again, we would still have to work with the building commissioner to see if he's comfortable with it. But this was just proposed, this came through as a last minute
It's
event.
fine with me, you can work out, to me, you should work out the,
Okay, yeah,
whether
just-
you're happy with.
Just wanted to check with you guys because historically it would be a hard no, as what happened up 123, the water main had to be extended, pressure tested, chlorinated, and online before any construction was able to be built. And to me, back then, as a tech, it didn't make a lot of sense, but I'm sure there were other reasons involved at the time.
The only thing that I worry about is them building this facility
Mhm.
and then selling the property and saying, yeah, you need to
Before they finish the.
you need to figure out
Mhm.
that other part,
Mm-hmm.
but
Well, I would say.
Can we approve a contingent on them being on the hook to finish the infrastructure regardless of what happens to their building?
I would say we could probably work up an order of conditions. This was just something to throw out. That
Yeah.
don't really need a vote or anything. It's just kind of a friendly discussion to see. Feel the room on what it was gonna be. Like I said, there's a couple
I
other
just people
people.
worried about fire protection.
What was that? So,
If there's a pond there, it sounds like they can.
yeah, there's a pond there, and like I said, a few thousand feet away, there's active fire hydrant. So it's not like it's in the middle of the woods. It's
Right,
just
right.
further away than most would be comfortable with.
Now, is this a unique enough situation that if we waive that and let them do it, is that gonna set some kind of precedent for someone else in town wanting to do the same thing?
I wouldn't think so. I think each
Each
upgrade is-
Yeah.
I mean, it is a huge benefit for, not only for the developer to be able to use that, but basically for the town to get that much of an infrastructure
Yeah.
improvement. That it wouldn't be something that we'd be looking to do anytime in the near future in-house. And this will also benefit that area for commercial growth now that there would be active water in the area. So, it's kind of a win-win. It's just,
It sounds like it.
just gotta do some checks and balances and formalities. So, anything else I forgot, John?
I don't believe so.
I have 4 questions.
Okay, I can only do 3.
That's okay.
Sure.
Regarding the recent fires that we had in town, is there any, other than the potentially water, one of my questions breaks into the other one, is the water main breaks we had on Dean Street. So I imagine I drove by them when we left the meeting last time, I saw the trenches. That's all set?
That's all set.
No more water
We've
breaks?
had no more issues. since then, thankfully.
And the fire department, I mean, I imagine they were as busy as every other fire department in the area. I know they were constantly running up and down Newland Street.
They were extremely busy. We had multiple mutual aid crews in from surrounding communities. So all of that could have taken a toll on the system, but we fared pretty well.
And we had found dead hydrants, so none of that.
All hydrants that we used were fully operational. We addressed each one afterwards to make sure that we were closed properly and will be secured for winter.
So that's 2 of my 4 questions. It was suggested to me with the new town hall that the complaints from Red Mill Village, I imagine other places, the fact when people go pay their taxes at town hall, there's no place to put their water bill. Has that been suggested to have a water bill drop off at the town hall?
I have not heard of anything. Have you, Brooke? Is that okay?
I mean, residents do ask, but
Well, I've got 5 complaints about it. Is
Okay.
it worth doing anything about it? I have no idea. I'm just telling you that, whatever. I'm just saying. It probably only happens twice a year, 4 times a year when people go to town hall and pay their tax bills, but I'm just saying. And my last question is the water sampling station, is that still operational or is that dead for the winter?
It has been operational. We did have some vandalism take place, unfortunately. We repaired it. We did have it freeze twice. It is not a heated facility, so we drain it at night. We activate it during the day.
It's not being used then?
It is being used.
Okay.
We've replaced and modified so that when it's shut off in the afternoon, it can drain back, open the faucet, everything works. We do have calls into National Grid that have not been returned to look at possibly putting a temporary drop there so that we could put some type of power or possibly a little bit of a baseboard heat or something like that there. But unfortunately, we've dealt with them in the past, and it takes a long time to hear back from them. So we will keep it open
Don't pay
as
your
long as
electric bill and see what happens.
You'll hear from.
I'm not sure that will generate a phone call. We may try that. Unfortunately, it's a different division. We've spoken to a few in the meter division. That's when we had to have a few replaced, and they tell us to call the different lines. So
I have found them to be very cooperative.
it's timely to deal with.
Comcast, I find, is the most cooperative of all the utilities, just from my personal experience.
If we can get them to put in the electrical service, we'll call
Just saying.
Well,
Utilities, they just love them. That's all I have.
all right then. I guess you're the one, you, Tara. She's not here.
all right. I had a couple things to update, but I think Frank's covered.
Right.
I think East Hodges Street, construction there, there's a couple items on the punch list. We're pretty much more or less shut down for the winter, come back in the spring. And notify everybody in the list of, police, fire, schools, making sure we notify them when we're ready to start back up on, South Worcester Street. Frank talked about well 5, obviously that's something that was new that just happened last week, so I got updated. I was on vacation for a few days last week and checking with our staff as well, just to kind of see if there's that type of motor, if there's anything that we've heard in the industry. Talked about potentially, some other alternatives, we'll see we just need to figure out what's wrong with it first.
Yeah.
So Frank Sullivan's on that. And then we had, talked about the aerators. I think we're all set with that. And then we just briefly mentioned the contract for the PFAS, so we had that voted on the total, the alternatives analysis, you guys voted on the total amount. We don't think that we have a signed contract, so we're probably gonna print that at the end of the meeting and have you guys sign it, so that we have a copy of that, but, it doesn't sound like it's at town hall. Thought it might have gotten signed between the last couple meetings, but, and then, that's pretty much it on our end. I think, I've got a list here for C. Pearson, and I don't know if, there's a lot we need to talk about on that. I guess well 4, we're still under construction on that, or at least, development of the actual well source itself. Get an update on that for the next meeting, but the hope is that we'll be able to finish that drilling and then get working on the design for the screening. And then hopefully within, next couple months, be up to approval for DEP, and then that's a bit after that. So looking at the late winter for that, so hopefully that'll move forward relatively quickly. So there's a couple topics here on Steve Peterson's side of the wastewater. The Elm Street, you guys have kind of updated that. We're hoping for a special town meeting and hopefully if everything will move forward. Our engineering amendment is still pending based on available funding source, so that's kind of up in the air right now too. His next topic was the Norton Public Schools. I don't know if there's any bad, but I'm going to read this verbatim and then you guys can let me know if there's any questions, or Frank might be able to answer some of them. But the temporary conversion from a groundwater discharge permit at the middle school to a Title V discharge is complete. So Weston Sampson is still working with the public school there. The Board of Health expects the middle school will be connected to the municipal sewer within the next 3 years, at which time the wastewater treatment facility will be officially decommissioned over the school. So positive news on that. The high school and Yale School sewer connection modifications project was advertised last week. The pre-bid meeting was held yesterday. The bid opening is scheduled for next Wednesday, and a contract needs to be in place by December 31st in order to utilize the existing ARPA funds. So that's kind of the one thing that's hinging. ARPA just needs to be appropriated, and a contract needs to be executed for that. So the work can hopefully start in the summertime for that. Wheaton College. So I think, Frank, you've been getting some phone calls from Gary over at Wheaton. They're working on updating their pool complex, and they need to empty the pool, which is approximately 500,000 gallons. According to Gary, they reached out to the MFN and initial approval to send the pool water to the wastewater treatment facility. They've asked us to consult with you regarding discharging the pool water through the municipal wastewater collection system at Wheaton College. So I don't know if you have anything to update the commissioners on that. It sounds like it just happened today. So
That did just happen. That is a very strange request. I talked to Steve quickly earlier today. So everything that we do with the MFN is to avoid I&I discharge into the wastewater system. Right. And I haven't spoken with anybody at the MFN, but it seems strange to me anyway that they would be willing to take 500,000 gallons of pool water, treated or not treated, in the system, as knowing it's going to dilute the wastewater. Yeah. So maybe that amount is so minimal that it's not going to affect any of their treatment processes over there. That's why
5 million gallons would be minimal.
over time. So that would be the initial thought, is that it would be a controlled discharge into the system.
Also, if they dechlorinated.
Right. So there's the cost for that. Some type of discharge into the wastewater system that's there. And then obviously they would have to pay for it. To me, it seems rather foolish to put 500,000 gallons into the wastewater system, not only for the treatment process at the MFN, but for the college to have to pay for it as sewage. There's no discount if it's clean or dirty water. That's all going through a flow meter. It's calculated. That's going to be on their bill. So it would only make sense that they had some other place to disperse that amount of water. But it sounds like they're limited by their discharge permit, putting it on the ground. So it's basically an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Yeah.
They're going to have to put in dewatering pumps around it so that the groundwater doesn't heave the base up when they take the water out and destroy the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
So that's already going to be
There's no
discharged.
pressure relief valves in it. Like we do not have that at Red Mill Village. We don't believe.
So that's one of their concerns. So that's going to be handled by a different discharge permit for the dewatering. So I think there may be some environmental concerns about putting so much water that isn't technically groundwater into the streams or down to the soil basins and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot more that has to be found out about this before the determination can be made. I don't think it's anything wrong with our facility handling it. I think we can easily take that on. If the MFN is willing to accept it, and the college is willing to pay for it, because it would obviously,
It's the MFN's call out, right?
100%.
So how are they gonna fill it?
I don't know. That hasn't been discussed. I think that
They're
taking-
That would be, do we allow pools to be filled without water?
we have, with special approvals, depending on time of year and location.
That's typically of the homes.
It's typically a home. It's not an Olympic-sized pool.
40,000
So how
gallons
did
or
you fill it in
something.
the first place? You probably don't know.
That was probably before me.
Right.
But that's a lot.
What is the reason they want to empty it in the first place?
They're doing some maintenance on it, yeah.
Getting it before we get in there and.
It's not an uncommon thing to be done, because we do it, I've worked in a number of swing states, but some of them are pretty blocked.
I mean, this is a big facility, so it's not gonna be a small project for them to do.
Here, that leaves the whole lot, including your drains. Down. So there's a massive move to upgrade the schools to be in compliance with the new law.
Okay.
So there could just be general maintenance.
It definitely seemed like a strange request and a strange initial approval from the MFN.
From time to time, they have to discharge water anyway, they backwash or pay for the filter or whatever. Probably right.
Yeah, and where that goes, more than likely, in my mind, it should be a dry well on the premises, but don't really know 100% because it's an old facility.
Even when they do that, it's a fraction of the amount of water.
We had 12 inches of our pool water disappeared
Yes, you said that.
in the summertime. And of course, the first thing I questioned was whether or not it ended up with something. Like, the other college one. And our conclusion was it didn't go there.
Mhm.
I think it was stolen. But fortunately that day, our cameras were broken.
Oh,
That's convenient.
Interesting.
Who put in a hot tub in Redville Village?
Big hot tub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was very strange that one day it was there, and the next day it wasn't.
That's a lot of water.
Very strange.
That's about the amount that would fit in a big tanker truck.
Let's don't know.
Right.
Where would it go?
Mm. That is so strange.
Wow.
That's one college prank that you're just never gonna forget.
Good job.
Right, the cured,
It's
yeah.
a secure space. It's not like, not that anybody can't just climb over it, don't get me wrong.
Plus, I think it would take a little bit to take their water, so.
And we already would have
2 minutes
heard,
and.
and we would have heard a truck pumping
Yeah.
water, right?
And it's not like it's a chain link fence, right? Like you can't see the pool there unless you know it's there.
Mhm.
Well, we initially had some, when we first built it, I understand we had some vehicles with that,
Mhm.
but when somebody came in and installed our furniture.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But that was the
Full
years
furniture.
ago.
There's a very quick update on the peer review. So Mansfield Ave with the level design group. So the wastewater group, Stevens crew had a meeting with them before Thanksgiving. We've got a check to move forward and we're starting the review on their updated plan. So, and other than that, I think that's the other
That
thing.
was it for Steve.
And then, thank you, John. We've got the, you guys already voted on this, but it was just.
Yeah, we just need to
going
sign
over
it.
the sign, yeah. And I think last time we were waiting for Steve to be here and he wasn't, and now he's done here again.
Okay.
I don't believe Frank needs to sign it, right?
No, it's just usually just.
These are commissioners, Clark and James.
Yep. And
I saw one on plate there, James is gonna ask me.
100% vote, is that correct, Stoke?
I'm sure, thank you.
It's last minute.
We've been so busy the last 2 days with the other stuff, it's hard to think of anything else.
No, and I don't know if it's probably been mentioned, but so you have CNOT as your low bidder for the Elm Street project, and we requested an extension for them to hold their bid pricing an additional 30 days beyond, and I think that extension is to January 9th. So you can ask, I believe you can ask for another one, but there's only so long contractor might want to hold on, but I think that's the other goal is to, if you're on a 3-week period of picking a date and then notifying the public, you need to get a special town meeting.
I will say, one thing that's working with us is that it's not a time of year where a lot of work's being done. So it's
Yes.
not like we're asking them to wait through May, June, and July when they would be powering along on the project, so.
Right.
All right. You have anything else, Steve?
I do not.
Neither do I.
Talk about when your next meeting.
I want to say it's 14th. I don't know
The
Would be the,
January 14th.
that would,
14th.
oh, yes, if you're counting, yeah,
14th.
Man, it seems far away.
Yep.
14.
So I have a problem in future meetings in March. So I'll let you know that I'm
Okay.
on vacation, so we may
Where are we going?
we're going to Puerto Rico
Nice.
for a month.
A month.
Well, you can come down and visit it.
My
Yeah.
grandmother used to go to Barbados for a month, 6 weeks for
First time I've done.
20 years.
I'll let you know how it works out.
Renting an apartment?
So we have a Airbnb,
Oh, yeah.
condo building.
Nice. I went on a job there a couple years ago in summertime, and it was nice, but it was way too hot. I couldn't take it.
I wouldn't go in the summer.
Yeah, it was awful. It was dry. It was awful.
Anyway. Anyway, I need to think about changing that.
Okay, we'll do that when we get to it. Without any further ado, Steve,
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
I as well. Thank you, everybody.
To ask you, Tara,
Yep.
not that you know about the future.